embarking on that path, what do you do to prepare?
Decide who's coming with you.
Very good. Writers groups. I didn't plant that, I promise.
No, she
What else?
didn't. I just read her mind.
What else might you do?
Buy snacks.
Oh, snacks.
Provisions,
Yeah, I was
for
gonna
sure.
say supplies.
Supplies, yeah. Now those supplies not only would be food, they would also be tools that you might think you need, weapons, armor, right? Whatever you think you might need on this journey. But how would you know what you might need on the journey?
Well, if it's
Based
writing
on, like,
group,
the
you
weather?
can.
Research.
Like, deciding the conditions.
Yeah, you're gonna look at the conditions.
I mean, some people have an idea of their journey, so.
Right.
Or
You
how-
might talk to people
Talk
who
to
have
people, right.
been on the journey, who are on the journey.
Yep.
Or how long it's going to be.
There are cell phones in this magical land, so you can call the people who are on the journey and you can find out what it's like. So those are the things you guys are about to embark on. I wouldn't call it perilous, but a difficult journey and an adventure. And so you want to prepare. So you want to talk to people. You're here. You want to talk to people who have been there before, who are at all stages of the journey. So just to tell you where I am in my journey, I don't want to be depressing or anything, but I've been working on like 15 years to get to this point, and I just got an agent. So.
Struggle is true.
Yeah. And so I've had a manager for a while, and that's the first step because managers are much more hands-on. They're also much more easily approachable. Agents don't generally come on until you have a really big deal on the table, and then they come on and start putting things together. And even then, sometimes they only want to represent that one project, and then that's kind of their introduction to you, and then you kind of have to court them for a while, and then maybe they'll sign you and start looking at your other projects as well. So it's kind of a long journey. So I've been paid to write screenplays. I have one produced film. It was a low-budget film that was shot here in Colorado. It's called Apartment 212. I think it's still on Amazon if you're not too scared. It's a scary movie, but it's not that scary. Alicia watched it.
I laughed a lot.
It's like gremlin scary.
Yeah, it's like gremlin scary.
Yeah, yeah. So I brought this script. Please do not take any pictures of this. This is a script that I was hired to rewrite, and you might get a laugh if you go through because I was very blunt. This was just for me. I was very blunt in my notes. Sometimes I was just like, no, makes no sense. Yeah. So just so that you know, this is what a screenplay looks like. This one's a little bit unusual because these guys that are credited as co-writers were the ones who came up with the original idea, and then they hired a screenwriter to write it, and then they hired me to rewrite it. So that's kind of how it happens. Things go through many, many iterations, and a lot of times it's not that something's bad, it's just they need a fresh take. They're kind of, one writer does what they can and then kind of, gets to their point, and then you need another fresh set of eyes on it. So that's what I was hired to do. I've actually done 2 passes on it, on that script. That was the original one that they sent me. So we'll be talking about some of the formatting issues and stuff, not issues, but formatting elements and things today that you'll just kind of need to learn as you move through the screenwriting career. So why do you guys want to be screenwriters?
What's the question?
Why do you want to be a screenwriter?
Because nobody will cast me.
That's not a terrible motivation. There are quite a few actors who got their start writing material for themselves. Rocky was written by Sylvester Stallone. Good Will Hunting was written by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. So there's, what's the Sling Blade? What's his name? Billy Bob Thornton wrote that. So that's great motivation. Anybody else?
I had a book idea, but I don't think I have enough time to write it as a book. I think I could actually do it faster as a screenplay. I'm not diminishing the craft, but just it takes a long time.
It is. Yeah, I'm writing a novel too. I'm working on it for like 2 years.
Yeah.
I usually write a screenplay in about 6 months. But
So that's, yeah,
however, I've been doing it a long time. So.
that's true.
What do you think life would be like if you don't write?
I'll still write, I'll journal. I'll keep doing it no matter what.
Right.
It's just fun to do it. And it's relaxing for me.
Yeah. So that's the main thing. If nobody was ever going to pay you 1 cent for your writing, would you still write? And if the answer is yes, then go for it.
Yeah.
Because you have stories inside of you, and you have something to
To share.
contribute to the world. So you guys, this is crazy. You know, I live in Aurora, like suburbs, right? On my way here, I saw a bear
Nice.
in the road.
Where?
Can you believe that? No, I'm totally lying to you, but you were hooked, weren't you? Oh, really? That's funny.
You were like right by me.
No, I told you that to get you hooked because that's how you want to start your screenplay. You want to start off with something that is surprising, but not just a random surprise like that. You want the element of a story. The most important element of a story is that you have a hero or heroine who has a misconception about the world. They believe something about the way the world works that is wrong and is no longer serving them. They come up against an obstacle, some big problem kind of strikes them that challenges this misconception. It instills in them a need for something that they can't get until they correct this misconception. That misconception can be called a flaw, a wound, usually stems from something in childhood that gave them a belief about the world that is just not working for them anymore, and they need to change. And that is why human beings love stories. We are hooked as soon as we see someone come upon something unexpected, because our lizard brains are looking for ways to survive, and we know that we're going to have to adapt when something comes our way, and so we need to we listen to those stories, we immediately perk up. This is something unexpected. What are they going to do? And so that's how you start a story. That's how you get into a story. There is a certain genre of stories where the hero does not change. Those are stories where the hero stays the same and changes everyone around them. Those are stories like Mary Poppins, Forrest Gump, Wall-E, things like that. And so there generally is still like a theme. People need to learn something, and this is the way they change. And so that's to help us learn and grow and change. And if you guys want to get deeper into story and the psychology behind story, there's a book by Lisa Cron, C-R-O-N, called Story. And it's really fascinating. It dives into actually like the neurobiology of why we listen to stories, why we tell stories. One caveat is she doesn't believe in any kind of structure. She believes that every story has its own structure, and good luck with that in the screenwriting world. But I learned a lot from that book, and I think it's really a really good read to really understand what's underneath the story. Because in a few minutes I'm going to go through the structure with you. It's just a very basic, bare bones structure. But if you don't understand the why behind the structure, then you're just filling in blanks, and it's going to feel formulaic. Every beat that happens in a story really needs to come from the protagonist acting in a way that will bring about change. So let's see. I think we got all that. So basically, I just wanted to say that storytelling is a noble calling, and it's a way that we help people grow and change and learn and be better humans. And so I salute you all for wanting to be part of the storytelling tradition that's been a part of human civilization since before the wheel. We are the shamans, the priests, the holy people, and so welcome. All right, so there are lots of different ways to be a storyteller. You can write novels, you can write plays, you can write comics, you can perform one-person shows, you can write short stories, you can make short films, and I encourage you to explore all of those things because every kind of storytelling will bring something new to you, and also it's really satisfying when you've been writing screenplays for a while to write something that is complete in itself, because a screenplay is not that. A screenplay is like a blueprint, and what you really want is a building, right? But all the screenplay is the blueprint, and you need a lot of people's help before you can build that building. So sometimes it's nice to just write something for you that is done and yours with nobody else having to do anything.
That's why I call it spec scripts.
Right. Yeah, we're going to go over spec scripts in a little bit. So, where am I? So, screenwriting is a very specific kind of writing, and the road to becoming a professional screenwriter is guarded by many, many gatekeepers. They're there partly because, interestingly enough, everybody thinks they can write. Everybody thinks they can be a writer, but very few people actually put in the time and the effort that it takes to learn how to do it. And so it's expensive business making movies, and people are very busy. Everybody always has 5 projects in various stages at all times, and they're going from here to there. And when you're on set, it's like 12-hour days, 6 days a week. People don't have the time to coach a brand new newbie screenwriter through the process. They want somebody who knows what they're doing. So the way to get past those gatekeepers is first to learn what the heck you're doing. Study, write, read, watch movies, listen to podcasts. My 2 favorite podcasts are This Screenwriting Life with Meg LaFauve and Lorian McKenna, and Script Notes with John August and Craig Mazin. I have found most of their podcasts to be very, very helpful. And the Screenwriting Life one also has a wonderful online community on their Facebook group that's really supportive. Take classes and get feedback on your work, and so that's part of why we're here, to help you guys get into a group where you can get feedback, because that's crucial, because you have to just keep getting feedback and keep getting feedback until the feedback coming back to you is, and from somebody who knows what they're talking about, not your mom. Sorry.
I'm telling her you
Yes,
said that.
this is this is great. Actually, no, Patrick's mom is here today. Look. And so you keep getting feedback until somebody who knows what they're doing says, yes, this is a pro-level script. And then you're ready to start getting past those gatekeepers. So the next thing you need to do is understand the business. You need to understand that there's how to write a low-budget script, when you can go crazy and write a big, $100 million script. You need to know what kind of stories work best in the different genres. You need to understand that there are genres. And the fewer genres, the better generally, because the people who are buying it need to know how to market it. They need to know what this is and where it will fit into the marketplace, and genre is a way of understanding that. Now, if you want to do your own little independent film that you make yourself, and it's a sci-fi, western, mystery, romance comedy, have at it. Very few people are going to watch it because the market, there isn't a market for that. So just understand that you're making something cool for yourself that you love, and your friends and your family, and you're going to share it where you can.
Would you say it would be fair to say that the money men, producers, would look at something like that and they would be like, I don't get it. I don't know how to sell this.
Yeah.
It's not so much that there isn't a market for it, it's more that they are skittish like horses.
Absolutely.
And if they
They've
don't
got a
know
lot
how
of
it's
money
gonna
on the
work,
line,
then, yeah.
right? You have to look at it from their perspective. They got a lot of money on the line, and if they don't know where it fits and how they're going to sell it,
It's
they're
too
going to say
risky.
no. It's too risky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to add to that too is just like you need to know who you're working with and growing with too. So like Kathryn was putting it perfectly, is that you need to know that screenwriting is just the start of it, and when you're growing with your people, your production, your crew, like you're consulting with them. So it's not like you're trying to give them your idea when you get to that point of idea of contingencies. It's a resonation that happens after trust is built.
Right. And so you're asking people to risk a lot of money on you, and so you need to be sure you can deliver. And then you need to understand kind of where you are in the pecking order once you get kind of up there. Unless you're also directing and producing your script. As a writer, you're on a movie set, you're kind of bottom of the totem pole if they let you on the set. A writer in screenwriting and for movies does not have a lot of power. And it's the total opposite in TV. The showrunner is God. Other than the network executives, they make all the decisions and the buck stops with them. So, so kind of understand where you are. And when you're starting out as a TV writer, we'll go over this later in the more advanced part, but there's kind of a pecking order in the writer's room as well. Don't be entitled. Nobody owes you a career in screenwriting. Be humble, thoughtful, kind, and more than anything, be collaborative, because this is a collaborative art form. Screenwriting requires the coming together of lots of, well, not the writing, but the filmmaking requires the coming together of lots and lots of people. And so you need to be able to communicate well, and you need to understand the chain of command in whatever situation you're in. And then the last thing that you're going to need to do if you want to be a professional screenwriter is learn how to pitch. This was the hardest thing for me, even though I'm an actor. I'm pretty introverted, and I don't really like to just, I don't like it. So I took improv classes to learn how to think on my feet and to be faster. And I rehearsed my pitches like crazy so that I feel relaxed and calm when I'm doing them. So with that out of the way, let's talk about structure. So if you open up your notebook, you'll see that I've got pages with a whole bunch of blanks in them. And PH, you don't get to participate in this. So I just want you guys, wherever there's a blank, tell me what you think might go there.
Call it out.
Yeah.
What about the percent?
Huh?
The percent?
Sure.
25.
25%, approximately. These are all approximate. Do understand that things can vary. So, like The Incredibles, one of my favorite movies. The first act is 40 pages long. It's really long. So that can vary, but that's what people are expecting, especially with new writers and new scripts. They want to see that you know how to follow the format. And then when you're in Sorkin, you can do whatever the hell you want. Okay.
I think it's 25.
I need to...
Yeah, 25.
Yeah, 25%. I need to have one that doesn't have the answers on it, so I know what to ask you guys. Okay. All right. So establish. What do you think you're establishing in the very beginning of your screenplay?
Characters and setting.
Yes,
I'll also say tone.
definitely.
And a fun one. Daily life.
Okay, that's the one I'm looking for. We call it the normal world.
Establish the world.
The normal world. So this is the world that your protagonist starts out in. Of course, you're also, starting out with your protagonist, because I say normal world and blank. The second one is protagonist. So you're establishing the world that they're used to. This is the world that they've got it down. There is a need. There is something that's missing in their life, but they don't know it yet. They're just going along and they're doing their thing. And so you establish the normal world and protagonist who has what did we talk about before? A misconception, yeah. Flaw, misbelief, wound, whatever you want to call it. And then comes along, around page 10, something called the the inciting incident. This is something big that disturbs the character's normal world, challenges their misbelief, and instills a new mission, purpose, yes, a need. The new paradigm doesn't come to the end. I've said that.
Wait, what were the other two? Inciting incident is something.
The inciting incident, something big disturbs the character's normal world,
Normal world.
challenges their misconception, and instills a new need.
Would the misconception also just be like a basic belief?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a misbelief though. It's
Yeah.
it's something that they
But they don't think it's a misbelief.
don't think, no, it works for them.
The audience knows that it's not the right belief.
You know, the audience doesn't necessarily pick up on all of this stuff consciously at first. We just know that they're behaving in a certain way and it's not working. And like I said, this needs to be something surprising, something that comes out of the blue and really catches them off guard, because that's what hooks us into the story. And then in most stories around this time, you'll also meet,
Mentor?
no, not yet.
The antagonist.
Not yet. Antagonist, yeah. There's either, you may not necessarily meet the antagonist, but you'll have some kind of encounter with the antagonistic force of some kind. In a lot of stories, you meet the antagonist in the very first scene. Some stories start with showing you the bad guy and showing you how awful he is. Like, think about Jaws, right? That's the first scene of Jaws, is that shark eating that poor lady. One thing about antagonists, usually it's, a person. But if it's an animal or a force of nature, like Jaws, there is also usually a person sort of standing in and kind of making that worse. So in Jaws, it's the mayor, the guy who won't close the beaches because he wants the tourism money, so he's making it easier for the shark to eat people. So in Jaws, the shark is the antagonist, but he has help. All right, so after this inciting incident, your protagonist is gonna, what are they gonna do? Are they gonna jump right in?
Reject the call.
Right, you know the hero's journey.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, most of this is based on the hero's journey. So there's gonna be a debate or a refusal of the call, and this gives you a chance to show some character, and also for us to understand that this journey is going to be difficult. Like this is not going to be something easy. It's going to be a struggle. Okay, and then they come to a decision point. Their need is too big.
Oh, it does not want to leave their normal world?
Right, they don't want to leave their normal world, yeah. And they have no choice but to engage in the conflict. So conflict is something that is absolutely necessary in screenwriting. Not just one big overall conflict for your screenplay, but you really need conflict in every scene. Otherwise, we're not engaged. All right, so Act 2. Did I put blanks on there? Yes.
25 to 80?
Yeah, 75, 80.
Act 2 was 75%.
50%, 25% to 75%.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, Act 2 is bigger, and many people say it's really 4 acts because everybody has a midpoint where something changes. So I call that Act 2A and Act 2B, but some people just say it's 4 acts. All right, so you launch into Act 2, you enter the conflict. Very good. All right, so the next section, if you guys haven't read Brian, Save the Cat, it's some people hate it, some people love it. I'm kind of weird, middle of the road on it. There you go.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
So I like it for beginners because it gives a clear understanding of the pieces and how it fits together. It is, however, formula, And so if you're strictly just filling in the blanks on the Save the Cat, you're going to write something formulaic. So I feel like it's good for beginning screenwriters to understand the structure, and then you need to dig deeper in your studies and understand why the structure is the way it is.
I agree with you, but as the intermediate screenwriter should read Save the Cat because it's formulaic. But when you read at the beginning of it, a lot of beginning writers get into that tone of writing like Save the Cat across the board. That's why I say don't do it to begin with. I don't agree with it. You see a lot of like screenplays from the 2000s are Save the Cat. Like a lot of movies about Save the Cat.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, everything that you read, like I read tons of screenwriting books, I still read them, and I learn something new from every single one, and I kind of like just keep a master list of things that I like, and there are certain things that I like from Save the Cat, like the fun and games. I think that's a really great way to describe the next section.
Can you give an example of that?
Wait.
Of the fun and games?
Yeah, what is that?
So that's at the beginning of Act 2, and it's a little bit more lighthearted. So the character comes up with a plan. That's part of it. They meet allies, and they start doing the things that you would logically do to solve this problem.
Basically all of Ocean's 11.
Well, yeah. So I'm trying to think. Okay, so let's see. In Star Wars, it's the part where they leave Tatooine. Thank you. I've seen Star Wars over 100 times. My mind just went blank. You guys, I didn't go to bed till after 1 o'clock this morning. And it's there. Going through, like, going into the, well, actually, the bar there is part of it, Mos Eisley. So they've launched into conflict because he's agreed to go to Alderaan, right? And so it's the fun part of the bar. You're just learning about the Force. They're on the spaceship. He's learning how to use a lightsaber.
Playing chess.
Yeah, well, no, that's, yeah, that is that part. And then they arrive and something's wrong, right? Alderaan's not there. Now it gets more serious. So it's that point from the beginning of Act 2 until the midpoint where things are kind of still light and fun usually. Even in like a horror movie, it's still like, yeah, some people might die in a horror movie, but it's still like, you still feel like, okay, they're doing it. They're getting what, they're getting somewhere. And it's called the Fun and Games. And then usually there's something, a twist or a setback in there to heighten the stakes.
Oh, can we go back for a second?
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to fill in the blanks. So doing things that one would logically do to address that particular conflict, is that the one?
To solve the problem.
Solve the problem. And then the promise of the
The promise of the premise.
premise.
So when you go to pitch your movie and you're like, Jaws. It's about this giant shark that eats people. And, they throw everything at it that they can. Most of what you're going to be talking about in that pitch is going to be that part. The promise of the premise is there's a big shark and it's eating people and we're trying to hunt the shark, right? So it's like the things that are really cool about your story, a lot of them are going to live in that section.
I got a quick question. So is that, I've never heard the term Save the Cat before. Is that what that means?
Yeah. So Save the Cat actually comes from his suggestion at the beginning that no matter how unlikable your hero is, they have to do something at the beginning of the movie to get us on board with them. I.e. Save the Cat. There was an older movie, I can't remember what it was called, but it was about an assassin.
Oh,
And
I see.
The professional.
no, it's not that one. It's even older than that. I can't remember, but
Is it French?
at the very, no. It's all black and white.
There goes
movie.
my guess.
And at the beginning of the movie, he opens this window and a little cat jumps up and he gives it a saucer of milk. that's where the term comes from, because like he's gonna go kill people, but we like him because he's nice to this cat. That it's not as simple as that to make. I mean, to make an anti-hero like Walter White or something like that is actually very difficult. I do not recommend you start with that.
But there is the opposite route, which is kick the dog.
Yeah,
Where if you want to have a guy who seems like a real motherfucker, we can kick a dog.
Kick the baby.
I mean, I would give that to my antagonist unless you're really doing an anti-hero.
That's my point.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the point of those opening scenes sometimes, where you just show how awful the antagonist is. Yeah, both, dangerous, and on a personal level, we do not like this person. So that's where the title Save the Cat comes from.
Yeah, thanks.
And let's see. Then usually at some point in 2A, you're going to have a twist or setback. How did I write this in here? Yeah.
Stakes?
Heighten the stakes, yes.
Yeah.
Is that the point of no return, or no?
I think that's the end of Act 1?
At end of Act 2. So
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
in the end of Act 1, you launch into the conflict, and then at the end of Act 2, you launch into the conflict to the point of no return. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So the normal things aren't working. So this is going to come sort of towards the end of your 2A. Normal things aren't working. The flaw is actually causing them to dig themselves deeper into a hole usually, and the antagonist seems really powerful at this moment. And then you have your midpoint. 50%, there we are.
You can get away with it anywhere from 40% to 60%.
Yeah.
Midpoint.
Yeah, these are averages. But it's basically a big reveal, often. That means new information comes to light. So they're going to Alderaan, they get there, and the planet's gone. What? Everything's changed. So at that point, there could be a false victory or a false defeat. Often, if you have a screenplay that's going to end sadly, you might have a false victory at the midpoint. Usually, it's a false defeat. They're gonna come back from it. And then after the midpoint, you're gonna re-strategize.
Discovery of a major new.
Major new information. So we want to re-strategize, dig in deeper, and come up with a new plan. And we're going to try that, and we're going to think it works. But no, we have another twist, setback. It may be a complete reversal. Everything seems like it's going well, and then bam. Something happens, and it basically takes all hope away, which leads to
Bad guys.
bad guys closing in.
Closing in. I was all win.
They kill the heroes.
Yeah, I mean that they do have a victory. The bad guys do have a victory there for sure.
Yeah, sometimes it's like there's a mid-second act, like when Ben Kenobi dies.
Yes.
Star Wars.
Yes, this is often where the mentor dies.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Dumbledore in book 6 of 7.
Listen, we don't have to bring it up.
Yes, this is when Ben Kenobi dies. This is when everything seems like, how are we going to do this? It's the all is lost moment. Darkest hour, all is lost, reevaluation. So this is when this has to happen, because this is what it takes for the protagonist to realize that they are going to have to change. Yay!
There we go.
They're going to have to fix their flaw, correct their misbelief. All right, in Act 3, 75 or 80% to the end. Often the Act 3 is a little bit shorter than Act 1.
What percent?
75 or 80 to the end, yeah. All right, so at the beginning of Act 3, you have a renewal. They realize that they're going to have to change, and so they launch into,
Like final battle?
yeah, the final conflict. And this is the point of no return. And then you have the final battle. Either the hero or the antagonist is going to survive. And this may be metaphorical. Doesn't mean you have to kill everybody in your little family drama. You know, if the antagonist finally comes around, like, you know, say it's, you know, the mother of a family, and she's the one who's been sabotaging everyone, and the hero child, you know, is the one who overcomes and, you know, learns to make the change that they need, they can then win over the antagonist sometimes. So it's a metaphorical thing, but the hero or the antagonist has to win here. Nobody gets to just be like, oh, okay. I mean, you can if you're writing a European indie movie.
What?
If you're writing like a European indie movie,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
You
In
know.
French, no rules.
Yeah, no rules.
What's the either the hero or antagonist survives?
Let's see.
Final battle?
So I got
Final battle.
victory or defeat. Is that where you are?
No, the very top.
Oh, very top is, yeah.
The blank is final battle, right?
Yes, final
Okay,
battle.
thank you.
I'm like, I can't find it.
Maybe a blank one.
So either the hero or the antagonist survives, maybe metaphorical, but not both. And then we go to victory or defeat. Often there's a surprise attack at that point, where you think you're done, but maybe a henchman comes back, or
And to Die Hard.
yeah, yes, exactly. Hans Gruber at the end of Die Hard is the perfect example of the surprise attack. This is just to show us for sure that our hero has learned his lesson. Actually, in Die Hard, it's the hero's friend who has
Carl,
learned the lesson. Carl.
Yeah.
He's finally able to shoot his gun again after having his thing. So the hero now has learned a lesson, and he has taught it to his ally. So it kind of shows.
We love cop violence.
So funny, I've never seen Die Hard, but I've studied it so much in screenwriting, I already know the like,
I mean, it is really good.
And then the end,
On the spot.
resolution. The hero returns to their normal world,
Or creates
having changed, or they may create
like a better world.
a better world, a new and better world. Yeah.
oh,
So, like,
the end of Free Guy.
at the end of what?
Free Guy.
Yes.
I love that.
At the end of Star Wars, Luke does not go back to Tatooine. He finds his new home with the rebels. This is where he was always meant to be, right? So that is your very basic structure. And I hope I got in a little bit about why it is that way. A lot of it comes from the hero's journey. Feel free to read everything you can and explore other structures. One that I'm trying to work with now and is still in the process of being created is the heroine's journey. People are trying to understand a little bit more how feminine energy would move through this kind of journey, and it's more so. The hero's journey is usually about a kind of a lone hero overcoming something in themselves and having victory. It's theirs. They have help and they have mentors, but it's their story and their journey and their change. Whereas the heroine's journey is more about bringing community together and having realizing that we don't do things on our own, that we're part of community, and it's more about community building. So, I'm experimenting with it, and you should too. And it doesn't necessarily mean that your hero or heroine are male, female. They can be any gender. it's the sort of the masculine energy of the lone wolf versus the more feminine energy of the community. That's kind of the difference there.
And you say you're reading a book about this?
I've read a bunch of articles. I don't know anybody who has a book about it yet, so it's kind of one of those things that's out in the zeitgeist, just kind of trying to form.
Probably the reason why guys can't write female roles.
Right.
What's it called? Just like feminist theory, or?
Well, people are calling it the heroine's journey to oppose it to the hero's journey.
Because the hero doesn't bring the community together.
They do, but it's that the story is more about their change and it's focused on the individual. All right, so just some terms that I thought you might want to know as you get in. Spec script versus shooting script. So what you're going to be writing is a spec script. This one is also still a spec script. Let me see, I don't think it has, it's a revision, so it's got a whole bunch of things, but it doesn't have like scene numbers or anything yet. So you just want to write a spec script. You want it to be nice and clean and simple. And this is your writing sample. It contains very little directing of the camera. It can be a little bit looser with the rules about slug lines, which I'll explain in a minute, time of day and so on. The shooting script isn't written until the funding is in place and you're ready to shoot. So that's where you like break it down and actually figure out the logistics of it as a shooting script.
So the shooting script is like a practical document
Yes.
where it's like, okay, so the DP can look at this script.
Yes, we know how to light this. We know where to put the camera. We know,
Right.
yeah, that
We
kind
know
of
how to
thing.
schedule how we're gonna shoot.
Exactly.
everything. That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so a log line. A log line is just a very short description of your movie idea. It's 1 or 2 sentences, preferably 1. The general formula is when inciting incident happens, your hero struggles against antagonistic force in order to
Wait, slow down.
reach a goal. It's all written in here.
No, yeah, we're,
It's written
It's
there.
long line, so it's just
Oh,
like-
I missed it. Sorry. Okay.
In order to goal before stakes are lost, before something bad happens. That's very general, and some movie ideas don't quite fit into that. You might need to move the pieces around a little bit, but that's the general ingredients that need to be there so that people can understand what your story's about. And if you can't fit it into that, then it might not be a great screenplay because screenplay ideas are actually fairly simple. It's not like a novel where you can go on years and years and years with a person's life and experience all these different things. Yes, Alicia?
Do you have to have a log line for TV though that would fit each episode or as a whole?
So the log lines for TV are a little bit different. They're just a little bit more open-ended, and they're kind of about, they kind of set up the journey that your characters are going to go on.
But you
generally-
have one for each episode?
So if you are trying to sell, your concept, not only will you write a pilot episode, but you'll also write a Bible,
Yeah.
which in which you will have basically a log line for every episode. Yes.
Like Friends is a good example because it's the one with Rachel's cat.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not quite a log line, but it's a start. Yeah.
Yeah, where she has that naked cat that nobody likes.
Yeah.
I think if you're watching something on HBO and you look at an episode, it'll have the episode title, and then it'll have what's basically a log line, but it's more like, here's 3 things that'll happen
Mm-hmm.
in
Episode
this
description.
episode. Yeah.
Episode
Yeah.
description, it's kind of a hybrid of it, but it's
Yeah.
it's technically a log line.
Yeah. And so one of the things that you're going to do with your log line is you're going to talk to everybody that you know about your script, and you're going to say, I have this idea, and you're going to give them the log line, and you're going to see their reaction. And if they're like, ooh, tell me more, then you know you got a good idea. And if they're like, huh, that's interesting, then maybe you need to work on the concept a little bit more. And then after a log line, you write a treatment. That's, you can go from a log line to a beat sheet, actually, is what I do. Just kind of very basic beats, kind of filling out that structure and figuring out where things are going to go.
So you go from the log line to the which?
To the beat sheet. I didn't put that in here.
Okay.
But yeah, beat sheet is just where you take something like this, something that you've figured out works for you, for the way your brain works and the kind of story you want to tell, and you just kind of start guessing at things that would happen based on, you know your character, you know their journey. You need to put a bunch of obstacles in their path, not just random obstacles, but obstacles that actually challenge that misbelief. And all of the other characters are kind of moving around them and going through a similar journey. They may be an opposite of what the hero wants to become, so they would learn from them, right? Or they might be something that they aspire to, or they might, just be someone who challenges a particular part of their journey. So all of the characters are there to kind of fit into this scheme of challenging the hero on their journey. And so then after you kind of get the basics figured out, you move on to a treatment, which is longer than an outline. It can be anywhere, I've seen them from 15 to 40 pages. Mine tend to be a little bit shorter just because, I don't know, I feel like you're just BSing if you're all the way up to 40 pages.
If you write that
Or
much,
you might as well
yeah.
write the script if you're going to write a 40-page treatment. And those, they're helpful for you to do on your own. But if you're working with a producer, then you want to give them a treatment so that you can all be on the same page. That's when a treatment might grow to 40 pages, because if the producer keeps coming back and, well, like, we need this and we need this and we need this, some get what you're doing and some don't. So
Or if you
Yeah.
have like really complex and perhaps not intuitive world building, like if you
That
have a bunch of
too,
rules
yeah.
that you have to establish.
yeah.
That's also growing your Bible, they think of the same side of it if you're working with a good producer. So if you're actually doing work that is not like for yourself, it's for the project.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, slug line. Did this passed around, right? Did you guys see all this? Okay, so the slug, here, I'll show you guys. The slug lines are the things at the top. It usually either says INT or EXT, that stands for interior or exterior. So it means you're inside or you're outside. And the way I think, sometimes it's confusing, like, so I'm here, right? And I'm watching something out there. Where's the camera, right? If the action is happening out there, but we're watching it from, if the camera's here and we're looking out, then interior. But
that's
then
sort
you
of a
might,
that might be a DP question though, right?
No,
you write it in,
perspective.
I mean, it could be,
Yeah.
but you, like, as the writer, it's your vision first.
Okay.
And then they can take it and the director can be like, no, we're gonna shoot this outside. But you establish your vision so that people reading it can see what's in your head. So if you see it as we're looking out the window and we're seeing that, and you see the window and you know we're inside, then write INT. Sometimes you'll see INT/EXT, and that is used when you're switching back and forth. So probably in a scene like that, we would see an interior shot, right? And then we would be down there with them, and that would be something they would figure out in production, exactly when they're gonna do that and how they're gonna shoot it. But the INT/EXT explains that sometimes we're in, sometimes we're out. I use that for cars a lot, because sometimes you're inside the car with the characters, sometimes you're, looking through the front window or the side window. You don't really know what's gonna be the best. They'll probably shoot the entire scene from all of those angles and then cut them together. So that's
So
when you would
just
use,
say interior, exterior, to be safe that way.
yeah.
Well, the weird thing about it too, with the car scene is a great example, is like somebody's inside the car, somebody's outside the car, they're having a conversation. It's happening in both interior and exterior.
Right.
So that's a great example.
Yeah. So plot, you guys know what a plot is, right?
Wait, I have a question. So
Yeah.
if it's like a very alive situation and they're outside but in a coffin, like
Is the
that
camera
interior?
right there in their
Inside
face?
the coffin?
Inside? Then I would
Yeah.
say
That's
it's interior.
Yeah,
I mean, not that I'm writing that.
Okay.
I've been there.
Okay.
If you need any tips, I got you.
So the reason I put the definition for plot in here is to just call attention to the difference between plot and story. The plot are the basic events that happen in the screenplay. The story is the character's journey as they overcome obstacles, grow, change, and learn. You don't just want to write a plot. You want to write a story. Story is what engages your audience's mind. And a plot can just be a bunch of random events thrown together that don't have any meaning. We're all looking for meaning, right? So action in a screenplay. Those are the lines that tell you what's happening on the screen. You want those to be, a friend of mine likened it to writing a haiku. You can't go on and on and on in prose like you could in a novel. It needs to be short and sweet and to the point. And your voice still needs to come through. That's one thing that's become more and more important. If you read older screenplays, a lot of times they're very dry, but more modern screenplays, they really do like to hear a writer's voice coming through. So the way you phrase things, how long your sentences are. People love to have a lot of white space on the page. It makes the read a little bit more fluid. That means, just kind of staccato and not a lot. But, I'm an English major, and I like to use some fancy words every once in a while, and people still like that. I did use bifurcate in a screenplay I just wrote.
What did you use?
Bifurcate.
Bifurcate. What does that mean?
It means to split in half.
Yeah.
I only used it once.
I mean, that's a form of voice.
Yeah.
It's like using really fancy.
Yeah.
Quick question. So what if you have a specific song in mind to be played during a scene?
I just texted.
Yeah, so it's best to just describe the kind of song you want playing, because if you put specific songs, then the producer who's reading it immediately goes, "Oh, how much is that going to be to get? I don't think we can do that," and it's just distracting. I have done a song and just said the song.
But also, is the song also like a song that's like a comedy song? So you're also looking at licensing and everything?
Well, it would be a parody of a song, but it's key to the scene is a parody of the song. So
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Then
just-
then you would probably want to write a parody of this song.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or just like sounds like.
yeah.
You can always use the tone of it, but like the fact is like licensing is the biggest issue with that.
Yeah.
What song?
So I think we've talked mostly about this genre. You guys know, like I said, combining more than two genres generally frowned upon for marketing reasons. Dialogue, characters having conversation. Specifically in a screenplay, it's the lines that are written for the character to say, and you can see how in the screenplay it's they're smaller, they're kind of stand out, and they have tighter much larger margins. All of the screenplay, by the way, that structure was invented to supposedly mean that one page is 1 minute of screen time. That's why it is done that way. And if you can try to think about that as you're writing, in terms of, if you are going to be describing something for a really long time, that means it's taking a long time to show this on the screen, right? Whereas if, it might be a room like this, but if I were to say it has 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, 8 doors and 20 chairs and 3 tables, like none of that's important. It's a conference room with chairs and tables, right? Like, because you're going to see it instantly, you're going to know what it is. You don't need to describe every little detail.
Hey, here's a good question though. Talk about Dune now with it's been episode 1 and 2 with the movies. So now we're talking about 6-hour movies coming out.
Okay, yeah, when you're Dennis, whatever. Yeah. There are a lot of things that more well-known screenwriters and especially people who write and direct can do that the rest of us can't do, especially if you're looking into writing spec screenplays.
It's an adaptation, is it adapted from the book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're adapting stuff, that's a whole other thing because you have to take a lot of the conflict in novels is internal, and you have to find a way to show that externally in a film in a way that's, you don't just want a character sitting there with a voiceover going through their heads telling you everything they're thinking. Unless it's really funny. There are some what was that movie?
Stranger Than Fiction?
Yes, that one's good. There are some movies that do voiceover really well. I'm thinking of
There's one called like Smiley Face where it's just like a high woman and her interior like internal monologue as she's high. Yeah.
Cool, yeah. And some people do that really well, but if you're going to do voiceover, you need to do something kind of new and interesting with it. And, you know, a lot of movies, like big epic movies, will have something to start off with so that you can help establish that world. Because if it's a complex world, then you need, you know, something to tell people what's going on.
Famously, the David Lynch tune starts with like a 6-minute like
Right.
the year
History of the world, yeah. So a monologue is when one character speaks for a really long time with minimal interruptions. And a lot of these is generally frowned upon in a screenplay, unless you're Aaron Sorkin.
Do you have something you want to say?
No, I love Aaron Sorkin, but if you look at his scripts, it's chunks and chunks of dialogue. And if you handed that to a producer, they would be like, thank you, no
I
thanks.
don't love it.
But like, aren't issues
I don't
ones
either.
where like people are talking like this?
People
and
really
they're
talk really fast,
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, as an actor, it's like insane.
I
How
don't
much
mind it on
words
Fleabag,
have to
though.
come out of your mouth.
I don't mind the monologues on like Fleabag though, like because
Oh,
the
yeah,
and
no,
those
those
and
are
everything. Like there's certain ones where monologues are just really moving the story.
Right, exactly. So there's like, it's no hard and fast rules. It's just be aware if you're going to do one of these things that people say not to do, that you're doing it, you know, in a fresh and interesting way that's going to get people's attention and not, you know.
Or you're appealing your audience. You know your audience too. That's right. I
Right.
brought up Dune because Dune is definitely appealing to the audience.
Right, for sure. So pitching, that's when you tell somebody about your story. So it can be formal, like a meeting with executives, or it can be informal. You can pitch to your friends and to your family and to your fellow writers. So there are different kinds of pitches. They call the elevator pitch is about a minute. You describe your story in 1 minute. I was recently at the Austin screenwriting or Austin Film Festival. They have a big screenwriting component that goes with it, and I was in their pitch fest. And I had to describe my entire TV series concept in 90 seconds.
No,
Yeah,
no,
it was not easy.
no.
That goes fast though.
That sounds.
But normally when you go in for a pitch meeting, you want to talk for about 15 to 20 minutes. And then you want to leave time for the executives to ask you questions and to have a little discussion. Those meetings are usually about half an hour.
Famously, I imagine a lot of you know this already, but like Kingdom Hearts was a literal elevator pitch. Like I believe someone from like Square Enix got in an elevator with a Disney executive and just said Disney and Final Fantasy, and then it took off from there.
Yeah, I mean, the screenplay that I'm just finishing up, I describe it as knocked up with a superhero. And that pretty much tells everybody everything you need to know.
Yeah, I'd watch that.
So, were you just tweaking your log line? Is that how you got to your pitch?
What do you mean?
So you know you talked about the log line, like the elements of the. Can you just tweak that to
Yes.
get to the pitch?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So your pitch usually will start out with a log line. You tell people what it is, and then depending on how much time you have, you can go into a little bit more detail about the basic elements of the story.
What's it called for like the movie posters where it's like it's shorter than a log line? It's like 3 or 4.
Oh, a tagline, yeah.
Yeah, tagline.
Yeah.
The tagline.
Like
that's where
Alien, in space, no one can hear you scream.
Yeah.
That's a tagline. It's more of a marketing thing. So the next one is just one that I only recently learned about, and it's kind of fun. It's called a Tiffany problem. Has anybody ever heard of that?
I have since you told me about it.
I know. Do you want to say? Do you want to tell us about it?
Okay, so the Tiffany problem, like here's an example, is the sound an eagle makes
No.
in movies is not actually an eagle. So like they use the falcon, and it's like that or whatever.
It's a very like
And
lovely, noble
It's
sounding.
a lovely, noble sound, but an eagle doesn't actually sound like that, and everybody knows it.
Eagles actually are like
Yeah, they're
like it's a
weird,
really
screechy,
screeching
things.
weird sound.
And like the same thing with an owl. So like only a great horned owl actually makes the who sound, and all other owls make like these like horrid screeching sounds. So the Tiffany problem is like the widespread belief or whatever that something is what it actually isn't in the conception of the film. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a widespread misconception in the general population about what something is, and even if what you're trying to do is more accurate than that, often you can't do it because people just buy it. And it comes from the name Tiffany, which became really popular in the 80s. So if you tried to name a character from the 1500s Tiffany, people would be like, that's dumb. But that is historically accurate. The name comes from women who were born around the time of Epiphany were named Tiffany.
It's basically the plot of Barbie then.
Like you can't name a character Tiffany at all.
No, if it's a modern piece, but if it's a period piece,
You
no.
can try, but it might distract your
Right,
audience.
right. It's distracting. The other thing is the @ sign, like the A with a circle on it, has been around for like hundreds of years. People used it in actual writing, but now people just see it as an @ symbol for like, yeah. Hashtag's probably going to go the way of the Tiffany problem too, because it's a hashtag, not a pound sign. So do you guys know what exposition is? I didn't put this one on there. This is a bonus.
Is important.
Yeah. Exposition is when you're telling the audience things they need to know. And you have to do it because the audience needs to know things, but you have to do, it's also called laying pipe. You don't want to see the pipe, right? When you're building a house, you lay down all this pipe, but then you cover it up. And it's still there, it still functions, but you don't see it, you're not really conscious of it. So you want to be able to give the audience the information that they need, but in a way that feels realistic and natural and doesn't call attention to itself.
I hate to do this, but Aaron Sorkin does a really good job at the beginning of this Social Network. There's the scene with Mark Zuckerberg and his girlfriend, and they're talking past each other, but all the things that they're saying past each other are establishing other characters, what they want, what the other person wants, what's going on with them, their flaws, and where they're trying to go.
Right.
And it's all done with dialogue, without explaining, without turning to the audience and being like, this is what I want, but through, and it's really well done.
If you ever find one of your characters saying to another character something that other character already knows, that's exposition. Like, Dan, you just came from the store. What was going on there? Yeah, that's exposition. And then the last one, you can go.
Okay, thank you.
He's going to go lead a tour at the Boulder History Museum, guys. He's a fancy pants.
Can I get a quick picture of you?
Yes.
Okay, hold on just a second.
The next one is clams. Do you guys know what clams are? Not the kind you eat.
Like, is it like hidden pearls inside of? No, I don't know.
Is that oysters?
Oysters.
Yeah.
All right, so a clam is another word for a dialogue cliche.
They shouldn't.
No, they're in oysters.
Did you hear me?
They are?
Yeah,
Pearls
sorry.
are in oysters? I thought you were
No, pearls aren't oysters, but a
Probably
clam.
not ever. Tiffany problem.
A clam is a dialogue cliche.
The world is your oyster. I think that's part of that.
Yeah.
I had like, I'm learning. Thank you.
So, the John August website, I told you guys about John August Script Notes. His website has a good article on clams that's like, he kind of keeps it updated for like really modern kind of things. And that's basically things that people write in dialogue that are just, they're getting old and stale. And it comes from this old joke from old movies where if somebody left a conversation quickly and suddenly, the person left would make an excuse for them and say, oh, she had some bad clams. And that was like,
Gross.
it was a joke. Right? And so they call them clams.
Taking baths or shit.
Yeah, gross. So yeah, you should do one pass through your screenplay where you cliche bust.
Who does the website?
John
It does
August.
say sometimes a pearl is inside a clam, but mostly.
So let's keep going with this metaphor. Sometimes you can take that cliche and you can turn it into something really cool by putting your own spin on it, and then it's a pearl. So that's it. That's the end of our beginner session, you guys. Thank you so much for coming. And
Can I ask you a question about so I have basically an outline like this for a story. What do you have suggestions for then moving from this to the actual writing out the story, or is it just sit down and start? Or is that part?
yeah, I mean, honestly, I seem to do it differently every time. Like I'm kind of experimenting with it. Sometimes it's helpful, like it just comes to me in paragraph form, and I just start writing it kind of like a story, this happens and this happens. Recently, I decided to try writing it in my screenwriting software. Oh, we were going to talk about screenwriting software, I forgot. Hang on. And I'll write the actual like slug lines where it happens, and then I'll just write a big block of this is what happens in this scene.
Okay.
And then when I go back through, I found that actually pretty helpful, because then I go back through, I can see exactly what needs to happen and where scenes need to be. What I find in going from
Like you write it like a novel and then go back and add dialogue
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah, and you might have some dialogue that it's already in your head that might come in there, but you just basically kind of write it all out, but in the software, and then, then you have something there and you can go back and like go through it and make it into actual scenes. What I find is that, they say the movie is made over and over again, it's written and then it's filmed and then it's edited. That also is true of your writing. Like, you write it the first time in your first short little outline, and then you write it again in your bigger treatment. You're going to discover new things there that you didn't see in your outline. And then when you go from your treatment stage into actual scenes, that's going to change too, because a thing that was working in your head when you were just writing it as a paragraph, suddenly you can't figure out exactly how to make it work in, actual real life. Like it's just a different kind of thought process, and you have to come up with scenes that actually are showing and not just people talking, sitting around talking. That's probably the biggest mistake that beginner screenwriters make, is they just have people sit around and talk about things. And you need to show things actually happening and moving and people doing things and taking action. The dialogue should be considered basically another kind of action. So you're never just explaining, you're doing something with your dialogue. You're lying, you're seducing, you're berating, you're trying to convince someone that something has to happen. And another thing to remember is that, like I said at the beginning, all scenes need to have conflict. So.
Well, Last of Us, I think, is great at doing this too. It's like a lot of people use exposition in their dialogue and express too much dialogue, where dialogue is supposed to be like an emphasis to your scene. I think, like Kathryn was saying, it's just like people focus.
Yeah,
too much
often
on
it's
story.
going to be exactly the opposite of what's really happening in the scene.
Yeah.
You want subtext in your dialogue. You don't want people to just say exactly what they're thinking. They always have ulterior motives, and they will say exactly the opposite of what they're thinking. So you have to start thinking of dialogue in that way. It's not just a way to.
mob movie thing, right? It's like everybody's, if you're in a mob movie, everybody's lying.
Right.
The way they lie tells you about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
There's, I forget, I know it's in some YouTube video, but I can't remember who said it, but there's a scene in Whiplash of the main character breaking up with his girlfriend and like laying out all the reasons why he wants to break up with her, and that is technically exposition, but we already kind of know all of that. So like what we're learning is not like that he's ambitious and like why, like basically he's just like telling you, listen, I'm gonna break up with you because like I think you're holding me back, and you're learning that he's callous through that, not
Right.
like he's saying exposition, but you're learning something else through that.
Yeah. The more you can do with every scene, the better. So in that scene, you're revealing character, and you're moving the plot forward by having them break up. So it's like you want to do multiple things in every scene. And screenplay software. I use Final Draft. That's the industry standard. I like it
That's like
because
industry standard.
Yeah.
I hate the industry standard. Sorry to cut you off there. The industry standard is about formatting, and this is like I even talked to Final Draft about that. So they format to industry standard. That's the point of it. But they leave that marketing there to create this guise of industry standards, so producers can use it against you. But like that's one thing that bugs me about Final Draft. I've had conversations with them about that.
almost everybody I know uses it.
There's one I use.
I like it because you can buy it.
Yeah, of course. So talk about the free softwares then.
But yeah, so there's free software, and there's Writer Duet, which Patrick uses.
So the free ones that you can go off like web-based are going to be Caltech's writer duet. If you're interested, I can easily get anybody a discount off writer duet licensing. It's a one-time licensing that you can go for. But if you just want to start a new email address through Google, you can keep on going there. But they also do writer single, which is you can download that to your web-based platform too, which is free. So that's the writer duet. Caltex is a Canadian-based company. Again, they're web-based, a great platform too. But then a lot of people too, they're Google, Microsoft Office, they all have now templates that you can go through screenwriting-wise on top of it for if you're just trying to learn the basics of it. But I started off Caltex, and then now for Final Draft, I have Final Draft 13.
Yeah, it just came out with 13.
13, so that's licensing that you had to upgrade your license, didn't you, for that?
No.
You didn't?
No, I usually buy the new version about every 2 to 3 years.
So they make you buy a brand new version of it every two.
No, it's you pay for an upgrade.
Offer it.
It's already. I could still be using Final Draft 6 if I wanted to.
I'm still on like Final Draft 5.
Yeah, they don't make you do it. They just.
To be a part of it because 13 offers a bunch more for production reality.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking that. But to upgrade your license is an option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually won in a screenwriting contest, Final Draft 12, so I was very happy I didn't have to pay for that
And
one.
that's a good reason to submit because I won 10 or 11 the same way.
Yeah.
It's these competitions where it's like
Yeah.
submitting to competitions is a way to publish your work through independent publishing, which a lot of people don't know. If you get your screenplays get accepted into a festival and your name has been then put into like any type of publishing or anything else like that, that's technically a publication of your work.
Yeah, you're leaving a paper trail.
Leaving a
So if
paper
somebody
trail of publication.
steals your stuff.
Well,
you'd be
okay,
like,
so
"Nah."
talking about sealing, you want to copyright with copyright.gov. Don't go to one of the, like when you type in copyright, you're going to get a bunch of ads for a bunch of services that'll do it for you. And it's perfectly simple on copyright.gov. It's like, what is it, $65 now?
Will you be talking about like when the best time is to copyright your stuff?
I can answer that right now. I mean, basically, when you have a good draft that you feel confident in, go ahead and copyright it. And then if you make significant changes, you'll need to do it again, but only if you really change a ton of stuff.
Yeah, and then there's no really point to register with the Writers Guilds at all. They'll ask you to register your work with them, but there's really no point in doing that.
Yeah,
So
I just do the copyright.
Copyright, and it's like, even for me, because I'm American Canadian, I technically can do copyrights for both America and Canada. So it's like each territory has its own copyright on top, which a lot of people don't think about that. So when you're working for different markets in different countries, it's something to also be precarious about understanding. So, Library of Congress.
Follow up. So I'm like very nervous telling people about my ideas all the time because I'm so nervous. Like I tell you all my ideas, but like, you know, there's been times where I've been really excited about something and somebody's asked me in like a film festival setting or something and I just went off about my idea to somebody and now I'm like, oh shit, they might now take it.
So,
You know?
theft does happen, but generally not like that. If they take an idea, I mean, if it's a really, really unique idea that's like out of this world, yeah, I'd probably just share it with close friends. But for most ideas, it's the execution that's important. And, you know, if you're already working on it and they're just starting from scratch, you're probably going to beat them to the market anyway. But, you know, I don't worry too much about that unless it's something that is really, like, what? Like, mind-blowing.
I
Yeah,
always had that
execution
concern as
is
well,
Well,
but for someone to
it
actually
happens
like
once in
take a
Lighthouse.
script and to actually make the film, like that's
Yeah.
a lot
Somebody-
of work.
It is
It's
a
not
lot of
like,
work.
hey, I'm just gonna do this. So it's like,
Yeah,
it's always a good
yeah.
idea to copyright, but I feel like there is
Yeah.
kind of minimal concern that someone's actually going to.
Yeah, I mean,
something
what
like
does happen is in pitch meetings, you're basically giving them all your ideas and there's no copyright or anything. They can,
that. Yeah, that's a good point.
they do it all the time. But you still have to do it because that's how you sell something. That's how you get hired. I have a friend whose motto is good enough to steal from, not good enough to hire.
Oh, yeah, I feel that, I really do.
But yeah, what can you do? Like, he's seen his stuff in huge movies. Actually, to a streamer or a network is very, very difficult. And so the way most people start out is by being a staff writer, which is kind of the lowest rung on the totem pole, but that's where they hire new writers for shows that are already in production. So, in order to get into a writer's room, in addition to a good manager, probably an agent if it's for a show that's already greenlit, you have to have a great spec script. You have to have a script that shows what you can do, that people can read, and they're not going to make that script. They're going to hire you to make their script. It's not super complicated, but it's also not an easy thing to do. And so in a spec script, and this applies to screenplays as well, but what I'm talking here is about writing so used to be you had to write a spec script that was an episode of a TV show that was on the air. That was always frustrating because TV shows are constantly coming and going and your favorite thing's getting canceled and you have to know everything about that show in order to write the perfect script and you have to study that show and by the time you finish studying that show, the freaking thing's off the air. So now, actually, people are writing their own pilots based on their own ideas and they're using that as their sample to get hired on something like that. So if you want to work for one division, then you write, or any kind of Marvel thing, you write something specific that's kind of tonally similar, and then, they'll consider you for their writer's room. So there are some basic things that have to be present, and usually they're going to want to see most of these by page 10. Because they have, so a showrunner who's hiring goes home for a weekend, he's gotten hired and he's staffing his show, and he goes home for a weekend and he's got 100 scripts piled up that agencies have sent him of their writers that they want him to hire. And these are people who are already represented by agents, right? And he goes through and he has time to read 10, maybe 15 pages before, if you haven't hooked him by then, it's gone, it's in the trash. So the basic elements that you're going to need to do is you have to have a story. So my class from earlier, what's a story? A character who desperately wants something, right? And they need to change in some way in order to get it. And they have obstacles in their way. The main obstacle being their own misconception, right? Now in TV, it is still a journey, but the journey happens a lot more slowly usually, because you've got so much time to work it out. These days, there are still procedurals. There are still shows that are, one-off, where the characters don't grow and change that much, but that's becoming less and less common. People really like to see, it's still a journey, it just takes place over.
People are invested in content. Yeah, the nostalgic effect is full on now with their culture.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing to put about it. So if somebody wants to watch something now for a little thing, they're invested.
Yeah. You want to start that story as soon as possible. So, are
you seeing that too from the limited series standpoint, that
Mhm.
some of the Harlan Coben ones where it's like?
Yeah, I mean, people keep going back and forth and saying, "Oh, the limited series is dead. Like nobody's doing that anymore." But then another one comes out.
Limited series?
Yeah.
I think limited series are more than alive and ever now.
I mean, it goes back and forth, but they are, like, all shows kind of are doing that. Like, they're making, even if they're planning on more than one season, they're doing a very much of a limited series for each season, right? Because they're doing a story and there's a series long objective that they have to reach.
Yeah, that's
so-
our thing about writing serials though, is like you have to have that arc.
Yeah.
And
Part of the
understand that
writers-
open and close of each season, and each
Yeah.
season itself is gonna be contained.
Wasn't that part of the writer's strike though, is that they were doing like all these like 6-episode series where they're hiring writers to like write it, then firing them, and then hiring staff writers, and nobody gets basically,
There was a lot of
Maybe that-
shenanigans going
Yeah.
on
There-
that
there's
the
a
strike
lot
has
going on in
been,
the
yeah.
background. Yeah, a lot of executives.
They're like
that
shrinking
have been-
writing rooms
Yeah.
and trying
Paying
to,
the
yeah, they're
profit
trying to
on
get
top
away
of
with
it,
everything, so,
My
yeah.
question was more about the process that you described, like in writing, whether that is something that we've seen a lot more of like, or hear more about in terms of like, okay, like I wanna pitch this particular story, and it might be best to go to a limited series route versus just kind of having it open-ended.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. There's definitely both. And I think the things that people are most excited about are things that can give them maybe 3 or 4 seasons. After,
just-
like,
Yeah, profitability wise.
yeah, profitability, like, after
3 to
that, it
5.
starts to get so expensive, because your
Yeah.
actors are super famous, and your writers too, like, and they want more money, and it just gets more and more expensive, like,
Yeah,
and they
Yeah,
don't
they
have
do.
as much ad revenue
Yeah.
as they used to. Like, so Friends, right? I'm watching that now. I think we're on season 7 or something, and it went like 10 seasons. By the end of that show, every single one of those actors was making $1 million per episode.
yeah. Like,
And they just don't have that kind of money anymore.
that's probably the reason why they can't do the reunion show. But when
Right.
Matthew LeBlanc now love it because it's just too expensive. And that's a reality, like people do get priced out of this industry.
Yeah.
Now he's too busy making Ed. Has anyone seen that movie?
So,
My brother
yeah, so-
loves that movie and it's the worst.
So you want to start make sure your story starts. I'm talking about in your spec pilot, right? You don't want to lay a whole bunch of backstory for, 15, 20 pages, even if that's important. Maybe don't write that story as your spec. Choose something where you can get the story started and get the reader invested right away. There need to be multiple what happens next moments. Even if you're writing for a screener, like those happen around the act breaks, right? And so even if you're writing for a streamer that's gonna be all at once, there are still, if you watch carefully, there are still those moments about every 12 to 15 minutes where you go, the character's in danger, what's gonna happen next? And you need to have those, and they need to build to a climax, right? So you need your story structure. You wanna be, telling a clear story. You don't want to start out with something that's got, 13 main characters and they're all intertwining and this, it may be beautiful and artistic, but it's not going to get you hired in a writer's room because it's just too complicated. It's hard to accomplish, but all of the storylines need to connect. So think of your main story as a tall tower, and then your subplots are smaller towers that you built next to it that have connections that hold everything up, right? So if they're not connected, they're all just gonna fall apart. You want them all to be connected so they have similar themes. The things that are happening in the subplots are affecting the main plot. Those people are connected, they know each other. They're doing things to change each other and push each other and challenge each other. Let's see. You wanna make it fresh, so your characters can't be just stock characters that we've seen 100 times. You want a new take on it. You want to give them depth and complexity and let it feel interesting and new. Their dialogue, like I said, no clams. You want each character to have their own unique voice. It's good to do a dialogue pass for each character. I always find new things that way when I'm focused on, okay, who is this character? What are his core traits? And how would they say this thing? So each line of dialogue pops up. I just put their name in the find, and I just bump through every time that character is mentioned, and I come up with their dialogue, and I really focus on that dialogue. And I say, how would this character say this thing? Not just it's accomplishing the purpose that I originally wrote it for, but how would this character say it? And then your description too, like I said, needs to be tight, but also really interesting and powerful. It is kind of like writing haiku poetry, because all of the description that you want to do always needs to be boiled down to the most evocative words and phrases that you can come up with. Because what you want to do is like, it's this tiny little package, and within it is contained this whole world. You want, in the reader's mind, you want that to sort of explode and populate. It's not going to be exactly the way you saw it, but it is going to populate their mind's eye with all kinds of things kind of from their history. And that's one of the cool things about this kind of writing, is that you're writing something that then is going to be interpreted by a lot of different people. It can be interpreted by a director, by a production designer, by actors, by costume designers. And they're all going to bring their personalities into it, and they're going to take the words that you wrote, and it's going to mean something to them, and they're going to bring that to it, and that's what makes it really cool and a unique art form. And exposition, make sure that's not clunky. We talked about that. So if it's a TV show, make sure that you have a main character who's driving the action. If you're writing one of the older kind of spec scripts where it's an established TV show, do not write something where the like guest star or the person who's only on it for one episode is more interesting than all your main characters. They shouldn't steal the show. You want to make sure you're building to a climax. There's something that happens at the end. Even on these streaming shows where you watch the whole season, each episode has something that happens that you're building to. Usually they try to make them bingeable, right? So they usually build to something, and then you're left with a cliffhanger, and you have to watch the next one to find out what happens. That's kind of the structure of those. So if you really want to get on a show like that, like Stranger Things, or that one's not going to be filmed anymore, but a show like that, then you're going to want to know how to write those cliffhangers in at the end.
Did they finally put a cut to the final season?
I think the next one.
I think
That's
this
gonna
next
be it.
one is
This
the
is the
last
last
one.
season.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying.
Well, it's just
They are
contractually-
spending like $30 million an episode on that show.
They have to
Insane.
contractually. Like, I think that's where they have the kids at for those 4 seasons.
Yeah.
But it's just thinking that they go like what,
So-
8 years now.
But doesn't the cliffhanger have to go with what the original Bible, like the original writer's concept would be? So like you have to follow what they would
No.
want? Like, oh.
So everything's going to change once you get into production. So if you managed to write something, which is nearly impossible to do, that somebody wanted to make and somebody else took over because you're not a showrunner, right? You don't have experience as a showrunner, and another showrunner took over. You would have to negotiate how much say you have over, and they're not going to give you much, right? Like, probably the best you can do is get in the writer's room and be a part of the decision-making process. Because at that point, the showrunner is going to take over, and they're going to break it down and say exactly what needs to happen where.
Yeah.
But what they want to see, the reason you write that Bible is because they want to see that you have enough ideas, and that the show itself has a central conflict that can carry you through many episodes. So if you can take the time to write out in this, 10 episodes and have interesting things happening in 10 episodes, it's more that they want to see that can happen than what it is that is happening, right? And they want to see, your creativity and your, what your ideas too. But like if you're trying to get hired on just any show, they don't want your Bible. They just want to see that you can write a script.
Yeah.
Is it
Well, it's 'cause
important?
the jobs that you're doing too is one thing to remember is you're consulting your services. I think a lot of people come in like, I want to be a writer. It's like, I want to create this whole visionary. But when you're consulting your services like as a writer on a show, you're there to do a job. And the job is to fulfill and tell that part of the story that you're hired to tell within that framework. And if you don't know the basics of building a Bible and screenwriting, how can you do those things? And like, I know people have been brought into rooms that have written their first screenplay, and that because of they knew a writer that coached them and then handed it off because one of their friends were in the room. They got hired onto a show, but then they got hired on multiple shows because they were great at doing that. it's a lot of this industry is also remembering that each show is its own business, and every time you're going to apply for the job, you're applying for a separate job. So it's like any job you're applying to, you have your portfolio together, and you're applying that portfolio.
Is it important to, if you're writing an original spec, to try to match the length of your episode with the genre, like the typical genre length or that type?
Yeah, I mean, any genre convention you're going to want to follow pretty closely. So, you know, there's half-hour comedies. So that's going to be, your script's going to be, depending on, everything's getting a little bit more malleable these days because of streaming. Because you can have episodes that, you know, for a drama can be 45 minutes to, I've seen an hour and a half, some of the episodes, right? So it's more flexible now. I would say aim for that target mark. Like if you want a half-hour show, don't go over 30, and if you want an hour show, don't go over 60, because you never know who's going to want to buy it. It might be TV, you know, somebody that has commercials and they don't want it too long. You know, they may, so it's best to write it for all of the potential audiences rather than limit yourself to just Netflix, right?
And also, it's like an expectation of climax. I think is one thing as an audience. When you're writing for genre, you're writing for an expectation of your audience's climax, and they're watching that for that expectation to a point. You're writing towards audience, and that's where every piece
But your first
matters.
audience is going to be, you know, the producers
Yourself.
and the people who, well, no, I mean the first audience that you give something to that
Yeah,
is
true.
going to determine whether it gets made or not. They're going to be producers who are looking at it from a more practical kind of standpoint. And so you don't want to give them something that they're like, what is this? We can't make this. You know, you don't want to give them a reason to say no.
Well, the big thing is also be authentic to yourself. It's your first audience.
Yeah.
It's yourself too. So authenticity is always going to shine. Your voice.
Yeah, that
As
is
a
how
writer.
your voice
And that's
comes
I think
through.
the biggest thing as teaching writing is we always tell us your voice and your tone matters the most out of anything.
So that's a tightrope then, because you have to have your
Absolutely.
own voice, but you also have to live in within this
100%.
box
Yeah.
and write for the audience and also the producer. So it's a lot of balls to juggle.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There's just a couple more of these things that I wanted to go through. So start scenes late and end them early. Have you guys heard about this?
Yeah.
I've
wanna
never heard that, but that
You
makes
want to
sense,
start
yeah.
your scene as late as you possibly can without confusing the audience, right? Like there are things that they need to know in order to watch, but you don't have to start every scene with somebody walking in a room and saying, "Hi, oh, how are you? Oh, come sit down." Get to the point.
Driving
Start
up
the
to
scene.
the building.
Right. Start the scene when the interesting stuff starts to happen, and then end it early. So a scene is a negotiation, right? Somebody wants something, someone or something stands in their way, and you, as soon as you know whether the character has gotten what they wanted or not, the scene's pretty much over. So you need to get out as soon as you can after that. And you know, you don't have to see them leaving the building. You don't have to, it's always so funny on television shows, like when they answer the phone, they never say hello or goodbye. They're just like, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Shh.
And
Because hello and goodbye are boring, like we all
the
know
screens
that.
never light up, so you know the phones aren't either on or real.
Right, and so like if you're having a scene where somebody's knocking on a door and somebody opens the door and says, "Come in," and nothing surprising or unexpected happens, you probably don't need that scene, right? You can start it inside when they're already, you know, arguing or whatever they're trying to do. However, if somebody knocks on the door, somebody opens it and is pointing a gun in their face, well, that's probably a scene that needs to be there. The conflict has started. And then you need to earn your ending. So there need to be setups and payoffs throughout. You need to plant a seed, and then you need to see it grow later on, right? So the audience, you want to set up clues that tell you what's going to happen at the end. However, you don't want to be so obvious that the audience is ahead of you and already knows what's going to happen, because then they're bored. But if your ending just completely comes out of nowhere and you've never set up those little clues, then they're just going to feel betrayed. Like, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
So it's another tightrope to walk. Okay, so just really quickly, in a writer's room, there's the head writer, showrunner. They're in charge, the main producer of the show, unlike movies where the director's in charge. The showrunner has the final say on all creative decisions. They hire the directors and the actors. They only answer to the network. And depending on the showrunner, like if they have a good relationship with the network, then the network usually stays out of the way and says, you know, you do your thing. Then there's different kinds of writers: co-executive producer, supervising producer, regular producer, not a line producer, that's different. Co-producer, story editor, that's kind of going down. Those are just all different levels of writing and how much power they have. They may have some influence in casting. They may have, you know, some duties of you know, hiring lower staff or whatever. And then the entry level position is the staff writer, and that's what new writers are hoping to get hired as. And being a staff writer, I've never been a staff writer because the show that I'm working on is, we're just the three of us, and so we're all just writer. There's a head writer and then 2 other writers. But what I understand is that you have to, it's careful. Like you want to contribute because that's why you're there. But if you are, you know, talking and constantly interrupting and constantly like, my idea, then you're probably not going to get hired on for the second season because everybody in the room at that point has way more experience than you.
It's a structured experience. It's very structured. So like there's time to talk and there's a time to pitch and there's not a time to pitch, and then the rest of the times to work.
Yeah, and you really need to understand what's kind of the culture of where you are.
So you kind of have to watch everybody else jump rope for a bit before you try to jump in.
Yeah,
Otherwise you're
exactly. Read the room.
Like, jump in there as a production assistant, not as like a staff writer, but.
Yeah, so there are lower
production
ones like that. There's writers' assistants and there's PAs who,
A lot of times you're not there specifically to create, you're there to like support and develop the ideas of others.
Exactly, because it's not your show. If you're a staff writer, you're just coming in to help write this show, so you want all your ideas to be supportive of that.
so it's kind of punch up then.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
so
that's a great way to put it.
actually, so what they'll do is they'll break the show.
Don't go too high.
So breaking sounds like bad, but it's a good thing. It's just breaking it down into the episodes and then breaking down each episode, you know, into what needs to happen in that story. So they'll usually do that as a group, and you know, they'll have a big board, and this is going to happen here, and this is going to happen here, and they'll spend a week or 2 just figuring all that out. And then usually the showrunner will divide up the episodes and give them to an individual writer. And if the staff writer's lucky, they'll get 1, 2. And then so they write a draft, and then they give it to the showrunner who rewrites it so that everything has a unique voice, a consistent through line.
I also compare it to like, has anyone done like a 48-hour film festival?
Yeah.
I compare it to like writing in a 48-hour film festival, because you actually have to write within that speed and that directiveness too, and also beyond that point, be able to get that job done.
Yeah. Alicia?
I have a question about like getting hired to be in like a writer's room, just as a staff writer. One, like if you get hired on as a staff writer, are you kind of like, are you working year round on this? Is it like and how much do they make?
The weekly salary is pretty good. It'll be like, I think it's $6,000 a week is the WGA minimum.
Wow.
But you're usually like on the shows the way they do them today, because there's not these 23 episode seasons anymore. Like that's only going to be maybe like 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh, okay. And then you're like moving to another show, or you're like on hiatus and you go back?
No, then you're just without a job and you need to try and find a job again.
So you should do that.
It's just like being an actor. Sorry, go ahead.
My question is related to that. Like, do you, and I don't know if you're going to talk about later, but like a calendar for that. Like, there's a phase when, I think I've heard of this before, the time.
Like pilot season, is that what you're talking about?
Like pilot season.
So it's kind of gone the way of the dodo because
thousands
of
over.
streaming,
Pilot
everything.
seasons?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's still a little bit because there are still some
Casting.
like network shows, yeah, and casting and stuff. But most of the time they're hiring all year round now
Right.
because there are so many shows that are on streamers and different networks that go at all different times.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there's not like a set calendar
A
anymore?
lot of it's
Yeah.
gone down to like talent searches and stuff like that too. So like there's like the Series Fest has the Rhonda Shona.
Shonda
Shonda
Rhimes.
Rhimes.
Thank you. Scholarship. So a lot of it's gone down to like talent searches and to go up that way, and also just getting your work out there. And that's where I think a lot of that has gone.
But is that for existing shows even, so, or is
I
this
think
for
each
new-
existing show probably has its own timeline. They don't premiere at the same time anymore, like, you know, like, I was watching Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and I was always like, when is the next season gonna come? And it was like a year and a half, and then it would be, yeah.
But like,
And to get in
so
those
is
rooms.
it a different writer's room for each episode then? Like they bring different writers, or is it
No,
you get,
so
you
it's-
get that job, you're in
Season.
there for the whole season?
It's for a season, yeah.
Yeah, each season is kind of runs, but then like they hire within too. So to get into those rooms, it's like you actually have to know somebody and be friends with them. So like a lot of it's just go to writer retreats and start to get to know people within the industry to get into those rooms, because it's really like that close knit, and it's going to stay that way. It always kind of has been in LA. So like you just really need to build your portfolio and build your work and get into meeting those people, and then they'll invite you.
And so when you're writing on a show, every writer is expected to be able to sort of copy the voice of the show.
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to want to be able to write in the tone and the style of that show. You know, if it already exists, or if you're part of the very first writer's room, then you're helping to create that.
Yeah.
But it still has to be a consistent kind of voice and tone. And so that's, you know, you're already expected to start writing in that kind of tone and voice, and then the showrunner takes it and makes it even more specific.
Yeah.
And then every writer's room has, you know, their own culture. Different showrunners are all different. There's a lot of egos involved. You know, some writers' rooms just suck, and it kind of depends on the showrunner. Like, you know, some are assholes and, you know, very ego-driven, and then some are wonderful and nurturing and collaborative and, you know, aren't afraid to let other people shine. I usually find that when I encounter people with like a really big ego, it's because they're not confident in what they can do, and so they have to constantly be trying to show themselves, you know, everybody what they can do, and trying to push other people down. Whereas people who actually are confident they know they got it and they can do it, and they lift up everybody else up around them, and so, you know, you hope you get a showrunner like that.
But you can also open in the right rooms that you get constructive criticism, because there's also that too much positivity rooms too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
In LA?
We already talked about writers' rooms getting smaller. Yeah, they're smaller and it's harder to come by.
Yeah.
But the union really is fighting to try and
Well,
keep it.
but then
fair.
again, the other side of things, more writers are writing quicker and more on point. So like it's taking less. It's easier for writers at a certain quality to write a whole season, and it is easier for that than it
Well,
is to
in-
give you an episode now, especially for the
In
business
the
back
UK,
end.
I mean, that's the way they've always done it. They don't
Yeah,
even
sure,
have writers'
that too.
rooms. They just have singular creators who do the whole thing. And a lot of them wish that they had more like what we have.
Yeah.
But I like writing with other people. It's whether it's, you know, in like a larger group or just, you know, with a partner, just because you have somebody to bounce ideas off of, and it usually goes faster. I've written a couple of scripts with directors, so I was the writer, but we were constantly going through outlines and, you know, trading things back and forth, and it just, for me, it goes way faster because to have another set of eyes on it, you know, I don't get locked into my ideas about what something should be, or, you know, I'm not, that other person isn't seeing what I'm seeing because I know what I intended to do, and they don't. They're only seeing what's actually on the page, so that's really helpful.
Writing's a labor of love, and also screenwriting. I think people always think it's supposed to be a final progress, but it's a development to making a film. So it's definitely a labor of love. let yourself fail and grow.
Okay, so I wanted to step into talking about our writers groups. So y'all had a thing to fill out if you want to be part of a writers group, and we're going to try to put you together today. But I think there are also other people, you know, in WIFMCO who would like to be part of writers groups. So if you have specific, you know, people in mind, like maybe you have 2 or 3 people you know, and you're just looking for 1 or 2 other people, just write that on there somewhere, and you know, we're going to try and get people together. But it won't be finalized for today because I think, you know, I think there are a lot of other people who want to join, and we can get you guys into groups that are going to be really productive for you. So, okay, that is not what I'm looking for yet. Okay, so I was listening to one of my podcasts, and I cannot remember whether it was Script Notes or The Screenwriting Life, and they interviewed 2 members of a writers group that started, I can't remember where they were from, but they started very early on when they were all very much beginning writers. And there were 5 of them in the group, and at that point, 4 of them had won the Nickel Fellowship. If you don't know, the Nickel Fellowship is the most prestigious screenwriting contest that there is. It's run by the Academy.
Yeah. And they just changed their acceptance policies, which was really interesting.
Yeah, they did something where, like, they are accepting a certain number of screenplays, and once they meet that,
that's
then
it now.
that's it. They're not
Which
taking
means
any more.
that their submissions are basically eaten up within the first 2 days.
Yeah.
Because a lot of screenwriters are ready to submit now at that level, so the competition in Nichols has now gone to another level of esteemedness. But the other idea of it's like no scripts out of the Nichols Fellowship have ever been really produced either.
No, but not usually. There may have been 1 or 2, but
I feel really bad for the
But
one
they
person
get-
who hasn't won in that group.
yeah, they get they almost all get at least a manager and usually an agent out of it, and they'll get hired onto other things, and they get hired to write other scripts. That is the interesting thing. We get into this business because we love telling stories, and we have stories that we want to tell. But the professional side of this business is 90% writing other people's stories. So if you want to be a professional screenwriter, get your head wrapped around that idea, because that's what you're going to be doing. But if you just want, like, if you want to be a writer-director, that's another path. And, you know, that involves actually making your own films and learning how to actually direct and things like that. And so, you know, that's another path, but if you want to tell your own stories, that's often the way to go. Not to say, I mean, there are definitely screenwriters who, you know, write original material and it gets made. It's just, it's the exception, not the rule.
And it's interesting too, like, talk about the exception, not the rule. Gosh, I'm trying to remember the brothers, but they wrote,
Coen Brothers?
not the Coen Brothers, no, but there were a bunch of horror stuff that came out. But the truth of it, screenwriting, especially with that point of it as creator, you still have to sell your first idea to the studio to a point for them to allow you to get the ownership of rights for the sequels. And then you're really not even making money off of the first movie. Originally, that's the way it was. Now, I think that's dramatically shifted because of streaming. But like, you used to have to sell the rights to your first idea, and then that's why they would make episode 2 and 3. Like The Conjuring. That's the series I'm thinking of right now. And that's why The Conjuring 2 and 3 are right there. But that's where the ownership of those movies actually is where the creators actually made their money, not from the first movie.
Kathryn, would you recommend that writers also be part of SAG, the union, or is that kind of not?
SAG is the Actors Guild.
Sorry.
You mean the WGA?
Sorry. Yeah.
So, joining the WGA is just something that happens when it happens. I'm not WGA because all my paid work, except for one small low-budget film, is in animation, and animation does not get you into the Writers Guild.
Not yet.
I'm sorry.
I mean, they
Can I
keep
just ask for a request? Like, it's hard to listen to two people. at the
Yeah.
same time. If you could allow her to finish it. I'm not saying that you can't speak. If you could finish your thoughts
Yeah.
for someone else's, it's just hard to hear two responses at the same time.
Good idea. Yeah, so the WGA, like, basically you have to write something that's going to go into production under WGA contract, and then you will join the WGA. So it's not quite like SAG. They don't like, they don't be like, you have to hire a WGA writer before you can, like, yes, for staffing on TV shows, you're gonna want to be a WGA writer, but for films, especially, like, if they buy your film, then you'll be in the WGA. It's, yeah, you don't have to.
That's not true either, though. If they buy your film, they'll be in the WGA.
Well, it depends on if it goes into production and they're writing and they're using a WGA contract.
Well, it just depends on distribution reality of it. It's a guild. There's a lot of backdoor ways to enter it, but the truth of the WGA is that as long as you get it distributed, you have a way to argue it, but theatrically or through like a broadcaster, you have an option to automatically enter it, but it's like a director, if a director is part of like the Directors Guild, they can basically check you off to it. It's really semantical.
Were you in the WGA?
Well, like, I'm looking back to the Writers Guild of Canada, and that there gives me WGA entry. Yeah, and that's where I just know the difference between the West and the East, and also just do your research too. There's a lot of changes in the programs to become showrunners, so there's a lot of options to be showrunners through the WGA to all programs. So it's just like, it's an organization.
Hi, hi, Kathryn. Can you go over showrunners actually with us, if you don't mind?
You're late, honey.
And I do apologize.
Yeah, the showrunner's the one who's in charge.
Okay.
They make all the decisions and they make the show.
And that's what happens when I'm late. And I will take that.
Don't worry, I'm going to talk Elizabeth into a workshop on how to become a showrunner.
Yeah, but don't worry about getting into the WGA until, like, you need to. A lot of writers don't want to be in the WGA until as late as possible because there is actually a lot of non-union writing work out there. And, there's no need to necessarily be in the WGA until you're at the point where you're going to be working at that level.
Know the rates too, because if you break down those rates really come down to living rates.
Yeah, and a lot of non-union productions will actually just go by the WGA rates.
Yeah, the rates themselves, that's what is a big thing with the rates and what happened with the strikes this year, is because it's like, how much does it cost to live as a writer? And those rates break down to actually appropriate rates for anybody to live off as a writer.
Yeah. Okay, so the steps for going through the writers group. So, like I said, this came from the podcast that I listened to with this writers group, and I've since heard of several other writers groups that are having really a lot of success doing it this way. So you meet every week. Now I have written on there, if you can't commit to every week, then we can try and get you into a group that meets every other week or maybe 3 weeks a month. But what is important is that everybody commits to showing up every single time, because that's what it needs in order to move forward. And so you present your work to the group in 4 stages. The first stage are log lines. So we talked about that's how you explain your idea, and I gave you the basic formula for the log line in that in the definition of terms. So the first step is to come up with 5 to 10 log lines, and you bring them to the group and you discuss them. And like I said, you pitch them and you see what lights people up and what really gets people's attention. From those.
Sorry, just to clarify, so this is log lines of your own idea at a writer's group, but not other. You're not bringing log lines for other people's ideas like that they asked for.
No.
Okay.
No, bring your own log lines to the group to discuss. You're going to want to consider, make sure you understand what the antagonist is, what the journey the character will go on. You want to think about your connection to the story. Why do you want to tell this story? Why is it important to you? And it's okay if you don't know, but thinking about it might help you find that spark. And so basically, you just talk about it with your writers group until you find the idea that everybody's excited about. And then you take that idea and you turn it into a one-pager. If this is for like a 30 to 60 minute pilot. 3 to 4 paragraphs, beginning, middle, end. For TV, you might want to stick to 2 or 3 paragraphs for your pilot, and then a paragraph describing where the rest of the season should go. And this is just an opportunity for you to figure out what's really interesting about your story, and kind of perfect it. And so you want to take this to your writers group and work that out until it's really exciting. This is a document that you might at some point use to pitch it, to producers. So you want to get that, you want to get it as good and exciting as possible. And sometimes people do this backwards. They write a whole screenplay, and then they go try to figure out the summary and the pitch and the logline, and find it's just so confusing that they can't narrow it all down. So starting from this direction actually helps you kind of keep it simple and keep it focused. And then you'll move on to a larger outline treatment, 8 to 15 pages, where you talk about your act breaks. You have whatever structure you're using. You kind of fill out that sheet, and then and you just go through it and you write in detail everything that's going to be in your story. And then, so for the one-pagers, you might bring 2 or 3 of those in, because you want to expand it beyond a log line, the ones that people were most excited about and you might bring 2 or 3 of those into your writers group to discuss and pick your favorite. And then from there you go to your outline, your bigger outline, so you choose just one story to do that with. Be as detailed as you need to get your story across, but don't include minutia. And then discuss it. Use the questions that are coming up from people to clarify your theme and to understand what your own intention is in writing this particular piece. And then you can bring more of those outlines, treatments in until you get something that you feel like you're ready to write. Some people like to just get a basic idea and go write and work a lot of things out in the actual screenplay writing. I am a big outliner where I like to go over it and over and over it and outline and work a lot of problems out there and then go to script. But it just kind of depends on you and your personality and what works best for how your brain works. And then the 4th step is a draft, and you want to bring you're using your writers group's time, right? Like you're giving your time and they're giving their time, and you want to respect everyone's time. So don't bring in 140-page sprawling epic, right? I mean, unless it really, if your writers group agrees and you really are writing, the history of the Roman Empire, and it has to be, you're not going to sell that, but, if it has to be, but try and keep it to close to an appropriate length for a draft, 75 to 130 pages. That's low and high, but for the first draft, if that's what you got, that's what you got. Yeah.
So one time in a writing group, someone told me never to bring something that you have an agenda. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, a political agenda or like a religious agenda or like something like that, because you should never bring that to a writer's group or anything that you're working on. Like that should be your own personal thing. Is that still?
So I feel like it should be up to the people in the writers group. Because if you're all similarly minded on something, I mean, it's not a great idea to write something that is obviously an agenda, right? But every story has to have,
some theme.
yeah, it has a theme
Direction, for sure.
and it has a point of view.
Right.
So like,
Like if it's this personal passion project that
That
one
takes more
person in the room
ownership.
is really about,
yeah,
maybe it's not meant for a writer's group and that's just meant for like your own personal project, right?
Yes.
I mean, it depends on your writer's group.
Well, the biggest thing, like, to answer that question though, is like, when you want to enter a writers group, and I've actually had problems trying to start writers groups with that scenario, is that some people come up with like, this is my idea, I own it, this situation, you actually have to let yourself sacrifice and get ready for collaboration and sacrifice in a writers group. And yes, direction needs to be there, but the biggest thing in the writers group is that you're there to collaborate, you're there to be open-minded, you're there to really, it's
And
like you
that's-
may have your own like,
That's one thing
political
that you really have to work out with your writers, because you're going to be giving people feedback.
Yeah.
You're going to be, and I have specific ways that you're supposed to give feedback, but it has to be understood from the start that when someone produces something, it is theirs. And any idea that you give them becomes theirs. They don't have to give you credit in the screenplay, for writing it. If they have an idea that is so different from yours that it's something else, they can go write their idea. But they're there to help you with yours, and the ideas that they give during the feedback session become yours. You don't, that's something that you have to understand when you join a writer's group. Sorry, Emily had something.
Can I just ask one, clarifying? I think because it was also with the context of what it's like to be in a writer's room where everyone's working on the same project. Is this writing group more for feedback on everyone working on their individual
Yes.
projects? Okay,
Yes.
It's not about forming a group to
Correct.
write something together.
Right.
Thanks for asking.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so this is the groups that we're putting together to help you guys, get better at writing and advance your careers.
I just want, about perspective, right? I think that some people, especially when they're starting out, maybe think that they have to be a little bit precious about ideas. Every single person in this room has 800 screenplays in them. You don't have to be precious about ideas.
Yeah.
Everybody has ideas. Not everybody can write.
Yeah.
So if you give an idea or you take an idea, don't worry about, especially in a writer's room, like when none of us, except for, are working, so don't be precious about stuff. Just share and accept stuff and be.
Yeah, and the way that writers group help each other is you've got this brain trust
Right.
that is there to help you be better. If you've ever read anything about Pixar and how they develop their screenplays, the reason they were able to come out with hit after hit after hit is because they call it their brain trust, where you bring at every stage of your story, you bring it before this group of people, and they give you everything, criticism and praise, and and those stories usually go through 5 different versions before they make their final movie. It's a grueling process. I don't even want to go through what Pixar goes through. The story for Up. You guys have all seen Up?
They just posted an article about the house of that's fired up too recently.
So the original story that I think was it Pete Docter? Whoever was the original creator of that one. The original story he came up with was a story about 2 princes on floating islands battling each other. That is where that idea started, and he brought it to the brain trust, and they changed it, or they made suggestions, and what came out of it was Up, which is completely different.
I heard,
So-
I heard something interesting, different about that recently, about the inspiration of it. It was out of a house from New York, and the balloons were put up in front of the house.
I mean, that might have been inspiration for that particular part of it that maybe started after he, introduced
True,
that
that's very
original
true too, how the
idea.
idea developed, yeah, and
Yeah,
the brain trust.
so things come
that got thrown
in, from everywhere, but, they don't say that 20 people wrote this script, right? It's still, the brain trust is feeding that, 1 or 2 creators who have they're the captains of the ship, and they have to decide how to steer it. So that's the way you need to think of it, is you're getting all these inputs from all these different people, and you have to learn how to, take the ones that work for the story and guide your story so that it's still, otherwise it just flops, it comes apart and falls apart, and you have to start over, and it's perfectly fine, because you can rebuild it from there. So you take your, several drafts to your group as many times as you feel like you need. I mean, there are people who say they do 20 or 30 drafts. I feel like they mean passes.
Yeah. People exaggerate.
I would tend to do maybe 4 to 6 drafts, and then smaller passes working on things like dialogue and description and, putting my voice in and things like that as it gets closer. So, you start with the big structural issues and you move them all around and you figure out how it works, and then you get more detailed as it goes along. And the other thing about not wasting your writer's group time is don't come in with a draft that has like 2 words changed, right? Like, if you're gonna bring a new draft to your writer's group, really consider the feedback that you got and make important changes, because that's the point, because then they can see how those changes work, and then you can get more feedback.
Time is money, people. Time is money.
Yeah, and you don't want to be, I think you were saying about being precious, like, don't be so attached to all your words and your ideas that you can't see better things when they come along, right? You want to serve the story. You want to do what's best for the story that you're trying to tell, and not, well, I really like this joke and the way he says this line, and that's going to have to go if I make this change. Like, you have to be able to look at the bigger picture and see what's...
People say things, like, they might not be able to phrase it properly in the feedback or comments, but, like they actually have province of why they're saying what they're saying. So really listen to the feedback, don't really get offended about how they're saying it. But, just take it with a grain of salt and listen to why they're saying it, because it does have validity.
So we're actually going to talk about the tips for giving great feedback. So that's what this next thing is about. So let's see.
One of my favorite anecdotes about writing happened when what's his name, Mel Brooks was making Young Frankenstein. Gene Wilder came up with the idea to do the putting on the red stamp sequence, and Mel Brooks did not like it, and he didn't want to do it, but Gene Wilder kept badgering him and wanting to do it, and it's if you're I feel like if you have a good idea and you like it and you're lukewarm about it, and someone else has a different idea that they are in love with and super passionate about, definitely consider that. You might want to just go with the idea that gets more of a reaction out of someone.
Well, know your audience, and I think that's a great example of Mel Brooks knowing Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks knowing 2 parts of the audience is not seeing the full spectrum together. They were able to see that full spectrum audience. That audience itself was already predetermined, and also it was one of those things that badgering, and it's Mel Brooks came back and that whole statement is I was wrong, I apologize, but a very sarcastic way he apologized too, just seeing their brotherhood of filmmakers too, because those 2 were just a dream team.
Kathryn, do you want to do the giving feedback after lunch or right? Do we want to take? What would you like to do?
Yeah, we should probably break for lunch and then come back and talk about feedback. All right. So before we get started on this, just know that whenever you plan to have your meetings, plan for about 3 hours. After 3 hours, people's brains kind of start to shut down and not be so productive. So, if that's going to be a log line discussion plus 2 outlines, or 3 one-pagers, or 1 full script, just kind of plan. And I suggest doing a Google Calendar kind of thing where you can figure out ahead of time who's doing what, so that you know what deadlines you're trying to meet. And that's the other great thing about being in a group, is you are setting deadlines for each other and you're meeting those deadlines. So one, that's a good professional skill that you need to learn how to do, is meet deadlines, and also it gets you off your butt and makes you write, because if you're just sitting around waiting for the inspiration, you're never gonna write. Professional writers don't wait for inspiration, they just write, and then the inspiration comes when it comes. If you have a day where your writing is crap, and that's all you can write, well, you still wrote a bunch of stuff that you can then revise later. So the important thing is to write, and so setting deadlines and making a schedule for your group is important for keeping everybody working and on track. So, so now we're just going to go through guidelines for how to give good feedback. Step one, you have to read the material. If it's a pilot or a feature, read the whole thing through carefully before the meeting. Take notes. Have an open mind. Don't, if horror's really not your thing, but someone in your group wants to write horror, don't tell them it's terrible because you don't like horror movies, right? You have to judge it for what it is and for what the writer's intending to do. So focus on that and be constructive. So you want to take notes, the first time you read it, how something hits you. And then in your writer's group, you're going to all read through it again, just assigning the parts to different people in the group. And you're going to hear it out loud, and different things will strike you. And so you're going to take notes on those too. So the first thing you want to start with is being positive. So we want to talk about what is positive as well as what's not working, because you need to acknowledge what does work. It's not just the old, forgive my language, shit sandwich, if you've heard about that, how you're supposed to put the shit in the middle, put the good stuff on the outside, just so it's easier for people to take. That is true. But also telling people what is working helps them understand what to keep and helps give them focus for what to expand on. And it's not something that you're going to get when you're working usually with producers and more professional. They're pretty much only going to tell you what's wrong. But in your writers group, also focus on what's working well, because that building on your strengths is, how you get better. Sorry. And then I find it easier if you start the discussion with what's working, because it's easier to say, right? We don't like to come out, and bash what our fellow writer has just said. It's easier for people to start with what's positive and then move on to what's not working. So you want to, when you start talking about what's working and what's not working, but especially when something's not working, you want to talk about your responses to the material. So how it made you feel, your emotional responses, and intellectually, what it made you think about. But focus on those feelings. So an example, when I read this scene, I wondered if the story was going to go in this direction. I was surprised that it didn't. Or, this had me really excited. Or, I couldn't, find an emotional attachment to this character. Things like that. I didn't feel sorry for them, or, or maybe I was really worried about them at some point. So what you're wanting to give the writer is an indication of how their writing is coming through the page and how it's affecting you as an audience member. And you want to make sure that you give really specific feedback. So you might say something like, at the end of the second act, I didn't feel like the main character, oops, I didn't go on to my next line, was at their lowest point. I wasn't worried enough about them. That might be a specific critique that you could give, right? You don't want to just be like, it was boring. Or the first act's just not working, right? You want to get as specific as you can about how the material is hitting you, how it's making you feel. Okay, you want to ask about the writer's intent. You want to ask questions. The best writing coach that I ever had, Joe Kakati, was he started out every piece, he would watch the piece, and then he would turn to the writer and he would say, so what are you trying to say with this? Right? And he would learn from the writer what their intentions were and what their personal connection to the story was. And then he would tailor his feedback to how they could better achieve that. So that's what we're going for, is we want it to be what the writer is trying. We want to help the writer write what they want to write. We're not trying to make them write what we want to see, right? because usually when somebody really is in touch with their why behind their story and it comes through, it gets us excited too. We want to watch that too because it's universal. All of these themes are things that we all go through and we all think about and we all, struggle with. And so when that writer is really articulating that well, it connects with everybody. And then 5, critique the writing, not the writer. I shouldn't have to tell people this, but we all sometimes have our awkwardness about how we say things. Just remember to say something like, the scene doesn't have enough conflict. I don't feel like it's moving the story forward, rather than, this is a terrible scene, you wrote a terrible scene, right?
This is why I don't have my mom critique any of my screenplays anymore.
Yeah. So your job is not to persuade the writer to your point of view, but to give them objective reactions so that they can find their own solutions. Be specific about what's not working. So point to very clear, specific places and problems in the draft that they can find. So this is hard work. This is where you don't always necessarily know what's not working, but something's not working. With some of my writing partners, sometimes the phrase that we'll use is, this is bumping me. Like it's just this odd little feeling that you get that you can't quite figure out, but something's not right. And even if you can't figure out exactly what it is, that's valuable information for the writer so that they can start to look underneath and see, what the mechanics of it might be. Don't make up a reason. Like if you really can't figure it out, just say, this is bumping me. I don't find this convincing. I don't feel like the character would do this here. And you can try and figure out why, but the most important thing is to just give the writer that feedback so that they know how their writing is striking you. It's like I wrote here, it's a tentative kind of problem finding, whereas the problem solving is up to the writer. And along those lines, don't offer solutions until you're asked. So don't tell them how to fix a problem unless they want your feedback specifically on that. Like I said, you're not trying to make every piece in the room something that you would write. You're just trying to help them figure out what they want to write. And then we want to prioritize our comments. If your writer starts looking like this poor lady, they're feeling overwhelmed. And so you want to start with the bigger concerns, like the character's journey, the stakes of the story, the emotional impact of the piece as a whole. And then as you move forward, then you move on to smaller issues. At the very end, you're looking at, this is too wordy, the grammar, the punctuation, the spelling. I mean, honestly, in the writer's group, I would suggest that you either get a piece of software that really knows grammar, like Grammarly or something like that, if you have a hard time with grammar and spelling. Or you can just hire a freelance editor. I don't know. I'm not sure what people charge these days for that, but if grammar is really an issue for you, then you probably want to work it out outside the writer's group, because the writer's group is more about the creative expression. But some of the smaller things is when you get down to a scene, like I was talking about how you need to end scenes early and start scenes late. You might give those kind of critiques towards the end. Maybe their description is, if they've got these big blocks of description that are, 8, 10 lines long. I try to keep all my blocks of description under 4, if possible. Now, sometimes that doesn't work, but a lot of times, you can break a bigger piece up into 2, and then it's just easier to read.
100%, yeah.
But little details like that is stuff that you want to start bringing up around the second and third draft, right? So work from the bigger issues, getting everything to make sense, making the emotional journey clear, that kind of thing. And then as the drafts proceed, get more and more picky about it. Summarize your contents in a paragraph or two. Don't tell them how to, what to say or how to say it. But, write your emotional reactions, any suggestions if they want them. And then, have that on a piece of paper or in a document that you can send to the writer so they can refer to them later. Because sometimes, we get nervous when we read our scripts and people are reading them and reacting for the first time. We aren't always able to absorb everything that's coming our way. And so it's really helpful if you can take a few days and just kind of sit with it and then start going back through people's comments and see, what they had to say. And I'm going to go into this a little bit more with the writer. So the golden rule is provide your peer with the considerate and thoughtful feedback that you would want to receive. And so that's giving feedback, which is hard in its own way. But receiving feedback, especially for newer writers, is some of the hardest that you have to do. Because, one, it's hard to be critiqued. You want, even me, I send stuff out and I want somebody to come back and go, this is brilliant! But that doesn't happen. There's always stuff. There's always more stuff that you can do. And so you have to learn how to take feedback and criticism and still be that captain of the ship that's guiding, I did an experiment in a writing class that I was in once. I was like, I'm just going to take whatever feedback they give me every single time for weeks. And it was just one little scene we were working on. And the scene fell apart. It went all over the place. Because there was no one vision. So you are that vision, and you have to steer that ship. And the feedback is so that you can get an idea of which way the wind's blowing, and where you need to put your rudder and all that kind of stuff. All right, so you're going to send out your material at least 4 days before the meeting or other period agreed to by your group. It's really important that you give your fellow group members time to read the material, and don't expect them, don't expect to send it 2 hours before workshop and to have comments, right? Like, you need to be respectful of people's time. So at the very beginning of the piece, you can introduce what you're trying to do in no more than 3 minutes. This is for a full thing, not the little pieces. Little pieces really shouldn't need any introduction. You want to tell them what the script is, who the intended audience is, what you're trying to say, or what your personal connection is to the material, why it matters to you. So, I wrote a piece that was a time travel piece, and as I was working on it, I realized it was about losing my grandfather. Like, it's stuff like that you might want people to understand so that they can see where you're coming from. And then if you have specific goals for this draft, like I was really working on my character voices for this draft, so can you guys, focus your comments on that kind of thing. And then you listen, and you take notes, and you don't defend your writing. That's something that's really hard for a lot of people to do. Is you don't want to make excuses for why. Oh, but you don't understand, right? The feedback that you're getting is because something's not working, and what they say on the surface may not make sense to you, but there's something underneath if you dig deeper that is causing a problem. So that's why the feedback is. And you especially want to pay attention to notes that come up more than once. I'm always like, if one person says it, it could just be a personal kind of taste matter. If 2 people say it, I definitely want to pay attention. And if 3 people say it, then there's a problem and it has to be fixed. And then at the end of all that, you can ask some final questions, based on what your goals were for this writing or for this draft or for your next draft. You can ask for suggestions if you want them. If there's a piece that's just really giving you trouble and you're like, guys, come up with 5 other things that could happen in this scene, you know, and you guys brainstorm, and maybe they'll use them, maybe they won't, maybe that will spark something else in them. But those are the kinds of things, that's how you respond. And then only take like 15 to 20 minutes for this. Don't let your writers go on and on and on about how blah, 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 blah. Because we all get very attached to our work, especially when you're writing something personal. And so this gives you an opportunity to step back from it and get objective opinions about it and move it forward. I think that's all there is, yes. That is the end of my slideshow.
Yay, good slideshow.
I think all of this is in your books. I gave you all this, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
If I ask a question?
yeah.
So,
I mean, no, I don't mind. Please ask a question.
no, so I'm in the stage where I've given people my script for feedback and stuff. And each time I get like no's and stuff like that. The ending, I heard 3 times, the ending just doesn't feel right. Right? So I wonder, in your opinion, like, I mean, of course, we're all going to come to the point where we feel like, all right, this is enough, this is ready. But do you ever get to the point where like 100% of the feedback is good? Because, you're like at
There's
the end,
always going to be people who have, issues here or there. I think the key is addressing those things where you're getting multiple notes about. Usually a problem with the ending is a problem in the first act. That you're not quite setting it up. And so, that sometimes it takes some reverse engineering to get those things. But yeah, I mean, what you want is consistent feedback that, yes, this is really good and it's ready to go. It's not, I don't think anybody's ever going to be like, this is the best thing I've ever read. It's 100% perfect. Like, so. Oh, he's not quite finished yet.
Oh, but so like for you, like, what do you do? Like, okay, for instance, I'm guessing you've completed a bunch of scripts, right? But and then you get that one, you sent it out, it's completed, right? And then you get that one feedback, and it's nagging you. Like that is like because you sort of agree with it,
Yeah, I would change it before I sent it out to anybody else again.
You would change it again?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a famous saying, I forget who said it, but it is, a screenplay is never finished, only abandoned.
Was that Peter Gianello?
No, it was somebody famous, but
I think James Hart said it was like it's never done until the final shot, until it's cut.
So right, like I said, it's a blueprint, right? And you're building something, and so when you actually sell something, you give them the best version that you can come up with. It's going to go to a producer, and they're going to have notes, and you're going to have to rewrite it. And then it's going to go to a director, and they're going to have notes, and you have to rewrite it. And then if you have a big enough star attached, they're going to have notes. And maybe they're different, and maybe you have to go then to the director and be like, you wanted me to do this, but Harrison Ford wants me to do this, so what do I do? So it's a constant process. Like that script that I handed around, you saw how many writers were on there, and I'm not even on there yet.
Oh.
Like that was the script they gave me that I then rewrote, and then the other guy rewrote me again, and then I rewrote him again. Not my choice. This was the producer's choice.
I'm sure. The first time you had to rewrite it for him.
Like it was a contractual thing. Like they owed him another rewrite.
Oh.
And then they still didn't have the script they wanted, so they sent it back to me for another one. Any other questions you guys have?
So, is there any option, or I can just join one later, is there any option for like a relatively casual writers group, because I am in college and I'm working on several things and I only have like one screenplay, and I'd love people to I'd love to be in a sort of thing where we can communicate with other writers, but I don't know how much time I'd be able to commit to that, since writing's not like my number one thing, or
Absolutely.
even,
if we have people who want to get together and just like go like once a month and just talk about what they're doing, or maybe be, trade scripts kind of thing, we can look at setting that up.